In problem number 1, we want to write an equation where we know the vertex and 1 point. So my value of 0 for x makes the perfect square 0, so I get x minus 0. And when I do that, I get my remaining value is 0. That's how I got this 0. I am going to make the graph. So I have the vertex 0, 0 right here. And my 1 point negative 3, 3 is right here. So I can see this curves up, so I know A is going to be a positive value. So I am going to take this and plug it in. So I am going to use this equation. So that's what my 0's here, 0, that was the vertex. I'm going to plug in negative 3 for x, so here's negative 3. Y was 3, so y equals 3 right here. So I'm going to square this. Negative 3 minus 0 squared is 9, equals 3. I want to get a by itself, so I'm going to divide each side by 9, so I got 1/3. So my equation, I get y equals 1/3 x squared. In problem number 4, I want to graph the equation and then talk about the characteristics of the parabola. So I need to identify my ABC. So that's how I got 1. My linear term is 2. My constant term is 6. So because a equals 1, I know this curves up. So I'm going to figure out the axis of symmetry by going opposite of b over 2a. So if b is 2, I'm going to make it negative 2. So negative 2 over 2 times 1. My axis of symmetry right here is negative 1. That divides the graph into 2 equal parts. To find the vertex, I'm going to plug in negative 1 because the axis of symmetry goes through the vertex. So my calculator, I went negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 plus 6. That's how I got 5. So my vertex is 1, negative 1, 5 right here in the graph. Because this is standard form, I know 0, 6 has to be on the graph. So that's my y-intercept. So I have 0, 6 on the graph right here. So that distance from the axis of symmetry is the same on the other side. So this is my graph. Now they ask for the domain. That's my x values. This keeps getting wider and wider. So that's going to be all reals. I have a minimum value for my vertex. So all my y values have to be greater than 5. So my range is y is greater than or equal to 5. In problem number 5, I'm going to graph it and talk about all the characteristics. So my a is negative 1, so I know it curves down. My linear term, which is 5, so that's b. My constant is negative 3. So to find the axis of symmetry, opposite of b over 2a. So I have 5. I am going to put in negative 5 over 2 times negative 1. So my axis of symmetry is 5/2, which is 2.5. So on my graph, 2.5 divides it into 2 equal parts. So I am going to plug in 5/2 into my original equation. When I plug it in, I get 13/4. So 13/4 is right here. So this is my vertex. That's my exact vertex. Because this is standard form, I know my y-intercept is 0. It's always 0 and negative 3. So it goes right, if I continued the graph, it would be right down here. So I'm going to use that distance, the axis of symmetry, to draw my graph. It asks for my domain. It keeps getting wider and wider on x, so it's all reals. this is a this is a maximum value because it curves down. So y is less than or greater than 13/4. In number 6, I'm going to factor. So -1 comes out, and then 16 comes out. And I factor 16 as 4 and 4, and I recognize 2 and 2. Or if you recognize 16 is a perfect square, then you can go square root of 16 is 4. So I have a set of 2's. 2 times 2 is 4. So 4 comes out, and I have I because that's a square root of -1. Problem number 8, I'm going to FOIL. So 2 times 8 is 16. And then I'm going to do my outer. So that gives me -10i. I'm going to do my inner. So that gives me 24i. And I'm going to do my last. So that gives me -15i squared. Notice this is a smiley face. I'm going to combine like terms. My middle terms are -10 and 24i is 14i. I squared equals -1. So I have -15 times -1. That's how I got +15. Then I combined like terms. On number 9, this says subtract. So I am going to go -6, that's where I got -6, minus I, that's where I got -I. So now I'm going to combine like terms. I have 2i minus I, so that's how I got I. And then I have -3 minus 6. That's how I got -9. In problem number 10, I can't have a radical in the denominator. So I am going to multiply it by the conjugate because conjugates don't have middle terms. So I am going to go 2 times 2 is 4. -I times I is -I squared, and I squared is -1. So I have 4 minus -1. That's how I got 5 for my denominator. Now I'm going to do my numerator. I have to do full FOIL. So 4 times 2 is 8. 4, do my outer. 4 times I, 4i. Do my inner. 2i times 2, 4i. And I do my last terms. That's how I got 2i squared. I squared is -1. So I'm going to combine my like terms. So plus 4i plus 4i, that's how I got 8i. I squared is -1. So instead of +2, I have -2. So I'm going to go 8 minus 2 is 6. So these two answers are equivalent. Number 11, I'm going to factor. I notice right away I have a factor of 2 in here. So that's how I got 2 to come out. And then I notice y comes out of both of them. They both have at least a y in here. That's how y came out. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. And y squared divided by y is y. So 1y. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Y divided by y is 1. Don't need to write that one. Problem number 12, I'm going to factor 3x squared. It only could be 3x and x. It's the only way to get 3x squared. Now I want to factor -3. So the factors are 1 and 3. This 3 cannot go in the first binomial because then I have a greatest common factor. So that 3 must go here. And I'm going to put 1 here. It's got to multiply to a negative and add to a positive. So I'm going to make this positive and make this negative. And I'm guessing. I have to check the middle. So there's -1x, and there is 9x, and that gives me 8x, so it's factored correctly. In problem 13, I noticed 9 is a perfect square, so it's 25. So I'm going to go, the square root of 9 is 3. So I have 3x and 3x. Square root of 25 is 5, so I have negative 5, negative 5. Then I check the middle. There's negative 15, and then 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Negative 15 plus negative 15, negative 30, so I know it's correct. So problem number 14 says solve. So I notice 25 is a perfect square. There's no linear term, there's no middle term, so I know it's x minus 5, x plus 5. So what makes x equals 0, that binomial? X equals 5. And what makes that one 0? X equals negative 5, because negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So that's how I got x is plus or minus 5. In problem 15, I want to solve the quadratic, but I notice I can't factor it. I tried it, it doesn't work. So the quadratic formula will solve any problem. So my a is 1, my b is negative 2, my c is 3. So I'm going to plug it into the quadratic formula. So my opposite of b is 2 over 2 times a. So that would be 2 times 1. This is my axis of symmetry. Now I'm going to calculate the discriminant. So I am going to take negative 2 squared, which is 4, minus 4 times a times c. So I get negative 8. So I'm going to take negative 8 and factor it. I'm going to take out that negative 1. Then I have 2, 2, 2. I have a set of 2's that come out. That's where this 2 came from right here. Square root of negative 1 is the imaginary number, so that's where I came out. This 2 stays under the radical square root of 2. Then I noticed in this problem that I have a factor of 2, 2, and 2. So they all reduce by 2. So that's how I got this imaginary number. In problem 21, I want to evaluate the discriminant. And from the quadratic formula, b squared minus 4ac is the discriminant, because we take the axis of symmetry plus or minus the square root of the discriminant. So I have a is 1, b is 6, c is negative 7. I am going to plug in b squared minus 4ac. I get 64. That means I'm going to take the axis of symmetry plus or minus the square root of 64. I get 2 real numbers. In problem 22, I want to talk about the discriminant. So I'm going to list my a, which is 3, b negative 1, c is 3. I am going to plug that into b squared minus 4ac. I get negative 35. Under the square root, a negative is going to be an imaginary number, so I have no real solutions or 2 imaginary solutions. Problem 26, they're asking us about a rocket, and they give us the formulas for the rocket. They want to know how long it takes to get to the highest altitude and how long it takes. So in this problem, they're asking for the vertex. So we're going to find the axis of symmetry. So I need to rewrite this in the correct form. So here's the correct form so I can figure out my ABC. So my correct form, I'm going to go the opposite of B. So I have negative 68. 2 times A, negative 4.8. So this is the amount of time it takes. And then I'm going to plug F of that amount of time in. So that's how I got 235.92 meters.